28, 29, 30, 31. I've been doing jumping jacks. Now, how many of us are able to do jumping jacks up to? My body is trying to take in oxygen, right? And I have to breathe in the process of that. At the same time, it has to distribute that oxygen to the rest of the body. So some people will be breathing like that, right? Now, I'm just helping you build that capacity, right? So that's the first set. Now, to build that capacity, using just jumping jacks, you can do this from home, guys, and you can begin to build your capacity. Assuming tomorrow there's no movement because coronavirus, everybody's saying stay inside. Some people are going to run mad, and these are some of the things that you can do for yourself and to build that capacity.
The private sector is not yet fully utilized because not everybody can be employed by government. And we are looking at a future whereby more people are employed in the private sector than in government. So I think if we all work hard, if we all work together and invest in the right areas, there's been a lot of talk about value addition in the agriculture sector, in the mineral sector. If there is enough investment in those areas, I think it can create enough jobs for our children and grandchildren.
Okay. Yeah. I just want to take you to question number 4, Andrew, which is let's talk about your journey at City Hall and the foray into the executive director's office, which is as Andrew Chitaka,
Very
and
interesting.
as well as the director engineering.
Very interesting. I joined KCCA on 1st November 2011. And before then I was
for so much. CEO of whatever. They give so much.
This is the reason why you are actually on the bench.
Because of my credibility. Thank you so much. But now they attack you, they vilify you. And the goal is to weaken you financially. Is to weaken your honor. These are slanderers. So I'm glad that someone would stay up at night to ask and learn about me. And I pray that in the next 2 months, because I know many Ugandans who travel overseas, when they go there, one of the things, because the media has been so much, and Sam Kutesa, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, has really not done a good job. He has dropped the ball on this issue. Why? So many of us are being accused of being gay killers, including me. You've just heard that person. Uganda is being accused that we kill gays, which actually is absolutely untrue. And because of this, it has affected our tourism. It affects people who go overseas to do work or study. It affects whenever you go to a conference. Hi, my name is Eddie Okiela. Oh, where are you from? I'm from Uganda. Oh, you are the gay killers. And then you begin to describe. So one of the things that I've done is I've written a book, which should be coming out. I know that I keep saying the same thing, but the work of doing a book takes a long time, and I wish I could be supported. You know, many people who write on this subject, like Sylvia Tamale, she's supported by the Rockefeller Foundation, Carnegie Foundation. There is money.
Is a very big brand, and as we go on, we will probably discuss the things we're trying to do to see that things change for the better.
Good. Sean, on the CEO bench, for everyone who is following, we're live on our YouTube studio where we actually streaming from. So YouTube studio, for everybody asking for a link, is actually House of Talent Uganda.
Confident in themselves and what they are offering. I think that's the biggest problem. Like, women will easily settle for a less pay than men would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mona Onyeitodeke goes on to say, or I think this is a comment, says, I didn't know that beauty products are taxed at 60%. Whoa.
They are. I pray that changes soon, but they are.
Okay. So with that challenge of 60%,
setting up the company, you're doing tours all across the world. You know, a personal account is great, but how these things are taxed becomes important for you know, for your business later on. As soon as you cross that threshold of 50 million a year, you know, you're now in
the interest become more
shares.
Yes.
You're asking yourself, critical thinking. Critical thinking. What do you think that means? Someone will say it's deep thinking. In Luganda, kufumitiriza, you know, deep thinking. Why is it important to think deeply about things, about anything, about everything? Why is it important? You will be saying, mistakes. The reason why I need to think deeply about something is because I want to have the right outcome, the intended outcome. So we all live our lives in such a way that we have visions. Those visions is what you call intended outcome. I intend it, and therefore I work towards achieving it. But in the process of achieving, I need specific actions that should produce the results. But in those actions, there are also stakeholders, different people along the way. So I intend to achieve X in this much time, but who are the involved parties? And how do I navigate to still achieve what I want to achieve, regardless of the forces that are against my working? So critical thinking is your ability to arrive at what you intended with minimal costs. That's all. Whether in marriage, whether at work, in your progress, in your career, whether even it comes to innovation, where you want to come up with solutions, you want to create, it requires you to think deeply. But now when you say think deeply, there's another question that comes to mind. How do you think deeply? Because when we were in school, the education system is not designed to teach us critical thinking. It's designed to teach us thinking about whatever the teacher wants you to think about. So if your subject is math, the teacher wants you to think about math. And if it's English, science, think about what I've told you, then give it back to me in the same measure I've given it to you. So don't add your thoughts. Give me the thoughts I've given you, give them back to me. If you're 100% copy-paste, then you are smart. Then you pass that class, move to the next class like that. By the time you get to campus or to Makerere University or to a university or college, what do you have? You have a mind that is not actually used to knowing how to think about what to think about. It only knows about thinking about what it's told to think about. Then in the end, you're given dissertation. All of a sudden, they're asking you to think for yourself. It's the most scary experience, thinking for yourself for the first time at that age. You only do that for once. I think it's about, you usually copy-paste from Google, or you get some Macuba or some experts to do the work for you, then you pass. Then what happens? You now graduate from college, from university, and you're ready to go in the real world. And so the first thing they're looking for in a job interview, they say, we're looking for people who are what? They will say it They'll say critical thinking. They will say out of the box thinkers, people who think out of the box. But remember, you've been thinking in the box. But now they require you to think out of the box. They're looking for people who are resourceful, who can take initiative, who are creative, who can come up with solutions, things that no one actually taught you. So critical thinking, and the book or the guide that I have written is to allow people to have the tools, the mental tools, to navigate through their intentions and through the execution towards those intentions. That's the idea about critical thinking. So, we now know what critical thinking is about. But what are the tools? What tools? What are those mental tools? What do I do? How do I think critically? Now, how to think critically is what I summarize as 5-dimensional thinking, or different dimensions of thinking that collectively allow you to critically think about something. And it starts with the first dimension. By the way, you know what the word dimension means? Well, dimension means something having substance and depth enough to be believable. Something having enough depth and substance to be believable. That's dimension. So we're going to talk about 5 dimensions, and the first dimension is always look at the parts, meaning everything in life is made up of parts. Everything, including your body, is made up of parts, little cells, and then they make up eyes. But also when it comes to mechanics, cameras, anything you touch, a watch, everything we see is made up of parts. So the first thing is to always look at the parts. But that is not only scientific, we also apply it in situations. Every situation starts as an event. One little event, second event, third event, then collectively they create a situation. The whole is made up of parts. So look at the parts. Number 2, look at the relationship between the parts. Meaning, how does this part relate to this part? If it's in a camera or a car, for example, which is also made up of parts, how does this car part relate with this other car part? That's how we learn to drive. You cannot operate a car unless you know the relationship between and. See, those are all parts. Now, teaching you how to drive is to teach you how to relate. The timing between the parts allows for the function of such a device to actually work. So you look at the parts, you look at the relationship between the parts. Number 3, you look at the environment within which the parts relate. In Luganda, otunulira obuntu, buli kintu kyonna kikolebwa obuntu obutundutundu. So otunulira obutundutundu bw'ekintu, n'otunulira n'enkolagana ey'obutundu. Ekyokusatu, n'otunulira embeera obutundu mu bukolaganira. Embeera obutundu mu bukolaganira. Can I example? I'll give you an example. You imagine you've seen a beautiful girl. You're in a taxi. She's beautiful. You could say, yeah, she's beautiful, and move on. That's one event. It's a part. However, if you decide to stop the taxi man and say, stop there, and you walk back to meet the girl, hello, my name is so-and-so. That's a second part. Before you know it, you've created a third event. Then there's a situation. She's your girlfriend, but you're married. Oops. You're married, but you don't also have what? Embeera, financially. The environment is not conducive for you to add another part to your relationship that you already have with too many other parts. Your kids, your mom who stays with you, and your wife. Now you're adding another part, and you're creating a relationship within an environment that is not sustainable. You see? So you look at the parts, you look at the relationship between the parts, you look at the environment within which the parts relate. Now, what's the fourth dimension? The fourth dimension is about you putting yourself in the shoe of somebody or of a situation, then remove yourself. Then you put others in that situation, then remove them. Then stand back and observe how your mind creates solutions. Those are too many words. The simplest of words would be, think of what if. What if? What if this girl that I add to the part in a relationship of a new environment that makes me aside XY, perhaps if that happens, it causes XYZ, then what do? I get into problems. My wife discovers that XY is happening, and perhaps part of the money we've been as a family comes from my wife. She has a better job then now you have a situation where the other girl now is not interested in you. So it's now a what if. So before you start to talk to the girl out of the taxi, stop back, look at the parts, look at the relationship between the parts, look at the environment, then say, what if that what if in Uganda is watya. Watya ngo mwana onandetedde ebizibu. That thought of watya is what causes you to be fearful, okutya, nootya. And then what happens? You let go, you stay in your taxi and continue to your destination. So what have you done? You've solved a problem before it even began, because that problem is what you call a situation that takes place after a series of events that you did not intend, but you were just acting emotionally on your feelings, and now they become a burden on you. And therefore your vision, your intentions, which is the fifth dimension, what do you intend? Mu Luganda kyekinyumenyo bagamba ogenderera ki? Kiki kyogenderera? So let's go back to our situation where you brought in a side friend into the relationship. So I would ask you, if that's the fifth dimension of intention, what did you intend? Wabadde ogenderera ki? Mu Luganda, the word okugenderera comes from the word okugenda, which is a verb. It's a doing word. The thought and action are related. So if you are seated in that taxi using critical thinking, the 5 tools, you know what you will say? What is my intention? Okwesanyusa oba mirembe mu maka gange. You see how that is different? So what if I bring in this woman, okwesanyusa, will it also add emirembe to me? If the answer is no, then ekigendererwa kyo si kyakwesanyusa but mirembe. Therefore, let the girl go. Continue in your taxi. That's a very simple situation that can turn ugly, and a lot of people's lives have become havoc to themselves simply because they didn't have tools to allow them to assess and achieve the intended outcome. Critical thinking, 5 parts, 5 dimensions. Can we repeat them? Number 1, look at the parts. Look at the relationship between the parts. Look at the environment or context within which the parts relate. Ask yourself, what if? Intention is basically your feeling. How do you feel? Because also feelings are feedback mechanism. And always remember, every time you think about the 5th dimension, think of this scary thought. What you make others feel is what you mean to them. Think about it critically. I've never noticed that I have daughters until recently in February 2019. Is when I realized that I actually have girls. Before that, I would see them as children. The idea that they are kids, the children. A father looks at children as children. But then I became aware of the idea that the world doesn't see them as such. it has a lens through which they relate with them. And that lens is called woman. It's called girl. And so that changed my perspective of how I see my children today. I see them as girls, and I see them as women. Now the question is, what kind of women? That's when I realized, okay, what kind of women do I see? But what kind of women will the world see? What kind of women is the world conditioned to want to see? You know, and that became a very revealing thought, because then I'm like, okay, the world has all these lenses of women as tools for sale of products. Everywhere you go, they're used for music, selling of music. They're used for selling sex. They're used for all types of functions, and I'm calling them functions. So in a man's world, these are the functions through which they relate with a woman who was yesterday a girl child, and then that becomes scary, and so that's now what shapes my thinking. I have an 11-year-old who turns 12, but then she was still 11, and a 7-year-old. So I sat them down because we use critical thinking, so we had to break down things, and the conversation began in that context of how the world has been structured from day one, and it's structured to operate as a man's world, and the role of women is a small corner in that world. And once in a while, men call some of those out of the many. They give an opportunity to some of them to come to the world of men. If it's boardrooms, once in a while, but even when it's boardrooms, they will give them the role of a catering service provider. You know, a person who organizes the teas in the board. You're a board member, as someone else said, a friend of mine, I'm a board member, but I might as well be the kitchen lady while, you know. So once in a while, that's that sort of relationship. Now, my girls have been raised to think that they are going to change the world. That's what they believe. That's what they know, because they see the need for change, and they're able to point out that and say that should change, that should change. So they see themselves as agents of change. Now I'm saying you're seeing yourselves as that, but does the world see you as that? Now, so if you don't live in that reality, that it doesn't see you like that, then you are hiding from a truth, or I'm not helping you realize what is out there. So I want you to know the little role I can play is to get you friends who can think like you among girls, that together you can become a voice that penetrates to actually change the world. And that's how I started to support issues of girl child empowerment and women empowerment. And I think that's the voice that I'm sort of saying, look, if I don't do this, there's no propagation of transformation as I perceive it. So the best way to do it is to say, hey, we're on the same side, and can we change some of the things that did not work out quite justly right? And so that's the conversation that we're having with my children. I have never noticed the concept of father, mother, per se. My relationship has always been about me aligning myself to a force that I think is more universal and broader than the context of the biological context of who are responsible for putting your biological form together. And therefore that introduced me to spirituality quite early, where I referred and looked at the Creator as the source of both mother and father. And so that allowed me to connect quite early. And ever since then, that's how the relationship is. And so my father, who I later discovered was my father after some time.
This is the biological father now?
That's the body form father. And therefore I am like, oh, okay, so I can account for the idea that this body form carries the body type of that particular person. But as for my mom, I spent most of my first 5-10 years with her. But again, we were not close. We became close more when I started my journey to Nairobi and start a few of the passions I had. And I saw a different side of herself, which was a side of always, with the little she had, she could always, work towards ensuring. Like one time she got on a bus, she got a taxi to pursue a bus, an Akamba bus, because she knew I only had money to take me to Nairobi, but I didn't have pocket money for any emergency. So when she found it, she had to pursue the Akamba bus until Nkoko Njeru, somewhere in Kono, and they had to stop the bus, and my mom came up with an envelope too. That's the first time I realized, oh, my mom cares. But before, she was struggling with the idea that this is a young man who has no father, and therefore the relationship wasn't really lovey-dovey. And so that was my first introduction of her as a mother, was when I was about 17 years. So as I said before, the biological dimension of myself in relation to the question you asked is limited, that I can't speak of it that much. I never thought of my mom as a person who doesn't care. And neither did I think of her as a person who cares. As I mentioned before, that side of myself was blocked. I had no opinion for both. And it was funny because the other source I was tapping in sort of fulfilled both sides. The female side of nurturing and love, I could feel it through that force. I could also feel that masculine sense of direction and purpose and being driven and intensity, intention and stuff. I could feel that strongly. So I developed both sides, but not through the biological parent. And I could also find elements of a mother in other people that were not directly related to me. One particular person comes to mind, a lady, my mother, Muchala Luwama, we call her Mami Robina, in the orphanage where I later on grew up. And I could see the other dimension of that. And that was even more powerful because it wasn't conditioned on biological relationship. Therefore, it introduced me to the idea that love is a universal sort of force. And so, yeah, that's how I relate with that body of knowledge. My daughter lives in a different dispensation than I did. And therefore, perhaps the tools of my upbringing might not be practical for her. So rather than giving her that, I thought that perhaps I need to give her something that is more user-friendly for the generation coming. Something that she can use, but also quickly pass on, and it becomes timeless. And so I'm not raising my girls to be great workers. No, I'm raising them to be great thinkers. That's all. I think in this information age, yeah, you don't want to get your children to work towards being workers and looking for jobs and doing jobs. No, You want them to be critical thinkers because wherever life throws them, they don't need anything else. That's all they will need, and they can operate on a global scale because the principles are universal. And so that's how I'm raising them. So to answer your question, no, I can't raise them the way I was raised. It's absolute. It's a gone thing. I benefited from it to the extent that it's created and shaped my thinking. But a lot of my thinking is shaped with the future in mind. And I draw only from history beyond my history. So I read very widely from the Battle of Hastings in 1066 and its impact on the world. I read about the 1681, the laws in America that created. I read about aggregate efficiency in relation to near zero marginal costs in relation to productivity, growth. I read about energy forms. I read about communication forms. So I don't consider my history that great in relation to global history. However, where it becomes great is when I dig deep into my cultural roots. Then I find a certain value that shaped who I am, and I tend to draw more from that cultural identity of myself than I draw from my family identity as an individual. So then I can be able to analyze that cultural context in relation to other cultural contexts globally that were running parallel to my culture in time, and seeing comparisons and being able to say, while this was happening in Europe, what were my kings doing at that time? When Christ was happening, what was Chintu doing? So I call it retrospective history. I keep analyzing the global context within our cultural context, and then I start looking for themes that allow me to understand the principles beyond the physical expressions of what they would call development. The things we look at and say, those guys are better. They spend too much time in the physical. My people spend too much time in the unseen, and they lived there quite a lot. So now that we live in a world that is unseen more because of the new 5G technology, the world is going to be more of the unseen, and how you experience it is going to be more important than physical. For example, Uber already has expressed that. People are tending to be more in love with having access to mobility or transportation as opposed to ownership of an item called a car. So then what happens to the physical realm where you thought that the car defined you? So that's from the perspective of Western history. The physical manifestation of their greatness dwelled within the physical realm quite a lot. And in Africa, the spiritual stayed deeply embedded in our psyche, in our music, in our expressions of forms of expressions. And now that we are in a world where it's 5G, then the African spirit is going to become the spiritual property, whereas theirs was intellectual property. So you see now, intellectual property protection, Africa, spiritual property protection. And that's where the future is. That's 5G. That's critical thinking. That's where I'm more focused on. Yeah. So I draw from my history, but not simply from my 1977 to this Kawesa. That's too narrow to sort of bring context. As I said, culture expressions that reflect on property in physical forms would have such an argument as what the people had. The reason they are thinking that the girl child shouldn't have access to or right to inherit is purely on the basis of property. The idea that she would marry somebody and therefore property loses ownership through the male seed is what society is fighting for, which goes back to the historical construct of the world through the male dominancy. And so I understand that. I understand how they would feel about that. But on the other side, when you come to spiritual property, where it's not intellectual property, then what you're inheriting was already done. That gentleman, the prime minister you mentioned, had already transplanted his mind into the daughter. And that's the greatest transfer. That's the spiritual property I'm talking about, which then now resides in that girl, and he is able to account for it and say, that's the one that should therefore take all, because everything else can fit in. Seek ye first the kingdom of spiritual property, then all this intellectual property will be added unto you. So when you come from the world, as I've mentioned, the argument would be right to say culturally that should not happen. But also when you go back to our cultural context, especially the Baganda, you realize that very early on, men accounted for the role of women in the political establishment or management of society. How did they do it? It was simple. Men had a concept that says, this king of ours should have children from among every clan. Yes. So kings can't have children other than through women. So all the women in Buganda were raised to have the ability to be queens, because the chances that you can offer a queen for your kingdom means politically you've aligned to the power that be. And therefore, also the king takes the what? The clan of the mother. That is substantial. They're trying to say that the inheritance is beyond the physical form. And you have to remember that in Buganda, property did not belong to individuals. They didn't have need to own, because everything was owned by the king on their behalf and by the people on behalf of the king. So you couldn't find the beginning and the end. So therefore, where there's no property, they didn't have refrigerators, they did not have land titles. So why would they then discriminate against a woman? They couldn't. So in our cultural context, therefore, women discrimination was never a case. Never a case. Because they understood their role in making a man a king. And so that's why I'm saying that the recent knowledge we see of the Prime Minister is only limited to the recent confusion that the current education disposition brings in the mind of the learned, the elite, and they've accumulated some property and they feel I need to keep this in check, in line with my male dominancy. And I think it's a journey that they need to walk beyond, but it's a beginning. And I think I love the conversation, that started a conversation. But as to whether that conversation means anything in relation to the future is where now critically we need to think. What does it mean now when women also have a right to own property? Then what happens to a woman when she's leaving Earth? Who has the right to her property now? Does she give it to her son? If a son, why? Explain to her why. If it's to a girl, and why not a girl? Explain to her why. That's when the problem is going to arise. Then we have powerful women who are more owners of resources than their husbands, in which case the husband is only advantaged to the degree of the lady's resource. So now who is in charge of inheritance in that context? And that's going to be even more moving forward. So that narrative needs to be critically thought through than just, discussing it at a very superficial level. And so that's what I would think. I'm not doing anything really special to my daughter in relation to critical thinking, other than one thing, the idea that I am deliberate about it. And they also find it interesting. I create little stories, like when you read the book, those little stories make sense to kids as much as they make sense to old people. And so when they follow the steps, they can see the parts, they can see the relationship, they can see the environment, they can see what if, they can see intention. And therefore, once they get the gist of it, because you're deliberate every day as they do their little small things per day, whether they're doing school or at home, or they're chatting with their friends, where you're driving, and you're constantly asking, okay, which dimension is that? Okay, but you've not, so you gamify the idea of critical thinking. So it becomes a lifestyle. They talk about it, they see things through that. When someone does something, if I do something, they say, but Daddy, that's not critical thinking. And they challenge me. I'm like, okay, yes, it's true. I didn't see that part, but I'm happy you saw the part, because we do acknowledge in the book that there's what we call blind, corners of knowledge, and we are not all knowing. But for the parts we can see, we at least are deliberate enough to get it. So really the question is being deliberate as a parent, being deliberate to raise up children that can meet the world on equal terms is really what critical thinking as a tool does and empower them with. My mother in 1958, August 8th, she was born. Uganda gets independence in 1962, she's 4. In 2010, I look at the history and ask myself, did my grandfather see my mom then as a 55-year-old in 2012, meaning 50 years later, seeing her then? She was just a little girl. So, before I talked to my grandfather to say, wow, why didn't you see, if you had seen my mom then as a 55-year-old, would you raise her differently? If the answer would be yes, what would you empower her with to be relevant in 2012? So now those questions he can't answer. But you know what he can answer? Is to tell me that now I am in his shoes, because in 2012, my young girl was turning 4. Literally, the same cycle has happened. Now I have to face 2062, October 9th, and raise this 4-year-old like as if she's 55 years old. I have to know if she's 55-year-old, then she's likely to have a 35-year-old who becomes my grandson. And if that grandson looks back and asks me, Grandpa, in 2012, did you see my mom in 2062? I should be confident to answer on behalf of my past grandfather to say, yes, I covered the gap between the generations. That's the transgender. No. You see, it's a transgenerational agenda, not a transgender agenda. My mom looks at my life and my dad. My mom recently went to have a meal in one of the cafes in town, and she says, your late father called you his prophet and pastor. And those were very unique words for one reason, that she says, your late dad, I've never had that concept. My father passed on in 2018, August 15th. So he's about a year. But to think of the wife to my father saying to their child that your late father called you his prophet and pastor, I think to any woman who really saw value in a man enough to say, we have a child together, that's a statement of confidence that I don't need to tell her anything more. My life has been a reflection of a story that should make a mother be proud to have a son. My name is Kawesa Richard. I am a strategist, a father of 3, who is extremely intentional about critical thinking as a tool for success and also relevance for their lives for the next couple of thousand years to come.
Hello guys, welcome to my video this week where I get to talk about health and fitness for you and for me and everyone out there in this pandemic situation all across the world. And I want you to share this video to as many people as possible. Today's video, I'm going to tackle just how you start your workout from home. You are in a lockdown situation, confined in a place. Of course, not necessarily as lit as mine like this, because I got a little bit of a studio here and I'm trying to work out a few things. I mean, I do a lot of stuff from here. Yeah, but it's a confined environment that you can start your workout. And I want to share with you a number of things that you can do when you're in lockdown and to be able to look after your health and fitness really quite well. Now, without any further ado, today's video, I want to focus more on number one, how do I do the workout from home? For example, we're going to just do everything about jumping jacks and jumping jacks exercise, using your body posture and using your body weight to actually really work out. But more so, I'm going to be focusing on what we call cardiorespiratory capacity. So, the cardiorespiratory capacity is really the ability of our body to take in oxygen, which is respiration, use that oxygen at the cell levels, which is circulation of oxygen to the rest of the skin walls or body walls or to the rest of the body. And that oxygen and the circulation is used at the cellular level, which is the conversion of food to energy, what scientifically we call bioenergetics, right? And the bioenergetics, when you go deep down in it, is going to be something that we will refer to as glycogen levels, okay, energy levels. Now, the virus affects you in so many ways, okay? And the virus we're talking about, just like most viruses that come, affects a person from the lungs. And this particular one is affecting our really red blood cell capacity of oxygen flow, you know, distribution and stuff like that. And as well as, you know, the fluid path in the body, okay? What we say that if your body breaks down the fluid, of course, if the electrolytes in the body is not functioning very well, then the electrons that a body are wired with a lot of electricity, so signals are not moving, so somehow fluids are going to break down and you don't know what's going to go, and before you know it, we're in like a situation called mucus and all this other stuff. But this video is really to help you build that capacity from the confinement of your sitting room or your living room or your, you know, one bedroom apartment. And so I start this video by just warming up. Start with jumping jacks. I have a bit of space. I'm going to do this. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 40. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 40. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I've done 50 jumping jacks. While I do jumping jacks, I begin to develop, you know, you hear me running out of like breath in the process of doing that, right? And you can feel like I'm now beginning to pant along the way and feel like I'm running out of breath. That's a normal way because my body is trying to take in oxygen, right? And I have to breathe in the process of that. At the same time, it has to distribute that oxygen to the rest of the body. So, some people will be breathing like that, right? Now, I'm just helping you build that capacity, right? So that's the first set. Now, to build that capacity, using just jumping jacks, you can do this from home, guys, and you can begin to build your capacity. Assuming tomorrow there's no movement because coronavirus, everybody's saying stay inside. Some people are going to run mad, and these are some of the things that you can do for yourself and to build that capacity. Okay, so I'm trying to increase the capacity of my lungs, okay? the capacity of my chest, to my lungs, first of all, to take in a lot of oxygen, all right, and do a physical exercise. There is no better way for us to do this, to be able to survive from coronavirus. Short of this, we're going to go down very quickly, down the path very quickly. All right, so you're going to do this 3 sets. So that was the first set. We're going to do the second set, okay? Jumping jacks all the way up to 50. Simple. You can start with 25, 3 sets, okay? 25, counting 1, 2, 3 to 25 while you do it. That's 1 set. Counting 1, 2, 3, again 25, 2 sets. 1, 2, 3 up to 25, 3 sets. Take a bit, okay? In between, have a moment, just, gather some breath, a little bit, recover, and then go back again. So we're going to do this, all right? Second set. Ready to go? Jumping jacks is the focus of the workout today. And again, I'm just helping you build the capacity of your lung. While we do jumping jacks, you notice that my muscles are moving, okay? So my shoulders are moving, right? Because I do this to allow the capacity. The lat muscles, these muscles here, are moving. They're expanding and contracting, expanding, contracting, right? Now, when they expand and contract, I'm helping my muscles to build capacity, right? So the more I give it like this, the more space is going to be in my veins for my body to continue taking oxygen and the flow, flow of blood to the rest of the body, making it much easier for circulation and respiration to happen normally, okay? While I do that, I build what we call, increase my metabolism, so that the rate at which the food is going to burn from my body is also faster. But the one most important thing that we need to do is that our body develops new cells every single time we do exercise. Right, guys? So let's go back to the second set, and then I'll come back and explain the third set. Ready? 1, 2, 3, we go. The reason why we're counting 1, 2, 3, we go is because mentally you need to prepare yourself for what you're going to do. Okay? So mentally you prepare it, physically you activate. You get it? So 3, 2, 1, we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. All right, those are 2 sets. As you can hear, I'm breathing hard, and you can hear that I'm breathing hard. Again, we're just a warm up, but he's going to help us build a lot more capacity in the chest. You're going to start feeling like your chest is having some weight, or there's something going on, right? There's a burn, you're running out of oxygen. Sometimes you're going to feel some bit of headache, all right? Headache, headache coming. And so that headache, when it starts to come, you begin to feel like it's just a normal process. Your body is trying to adjust to, taking in oxygen, circulation of that to the rest of the body. There's a normal process of you building oxygen flow, all right? Ready? So we've done the second one, all right? Now, we're going to go back to the third set. The third set is where the real workout is, all right? Is where the real workout is. The real workout has never been on the first set. It's always on the third set. Third set is preparation. And you can do this up to the 10th set. Ready? Let's go. 3, 2, 1, we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. That's 150 times I've been doing jumping jacks. Now, how many of us are able to do jumping jacks up to 50 or 150? That's the number of times I have exercised my heart muscles, okay? All right? That's the number of time I've worked my shoulders, okay? That's the number of time I've created space. That's the number of time I am expanding and contracting, all right? That's just one set of the workout, one type of the workout, just using that called the jumping jacks. So you can start from the jumping jacks position and do up to 10 sets. So I've done that. Again, you can do this from home and you can make sure that your workout is effectively done from home if you're concentrating. So you must concentrate during the workout. All right, guys? So I'm gonna take you to the last set of the jumping jacks, all right? And then that will be a wrap for today. I know this video shouldn't be long. Share your comments, your kisses, and your disses. I want you to subscribe to my channel and actually make sure that you share this video as far as possible, as wide, because we're in a corona situation. Coronavirus affects the lungs of a person. And so we really need to build our capacity now than ever before. Now, if you have been doing this and you get to corona and you get attacked by coronavirus or a contracted disease, you need to get back to working out. It is worse when you're not doing any physical work exercise at all. You get it? All right, let's go, guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Get better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 40. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 50. All right? It's a wrap for today. And I want to say thank you very much for joining in. Look out for my next video coming next, when I focus on a different part of the body, but just showing you what you can do home, what you can do in the comfort of your sitting room going forward, and how you can actually navigate the disease called coronavirus and stay focused. Please remember, no one can ever make money when they're sick, and neither can you wake up in the morning to enjoy your money when you're sick. Nor can your money save you when you're sick. But there's one thing you can do. One thing you can do is to always be fit so that you can enjoy your money. All right, guys? Again, I leave it with this. I always say this. There are two combinations you cannot have in life. Two combinations that you shouldn't have in life. Two combinations you should never have in life. One, you cannot be unfit and broke. You cannot be unfit and broke. You cannot be unfit and poor. God will reject you. You get it? Thank you very much. Until the next video, share it far and wide and reach out to me. My Twitter handle is @AudioKiller. Please reach out to me, write to me. Please reach out to me. My Twitter handle is @IamAudioKiller. @IamAudioKiller. Write to me and tell me your story and how you're doing. And you can reach out to me on my Twitter. Just go to my Twitter. My Twitter handle is my Twitter handle. Please follow me on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Of course, my Twitter handle is @IamAudioKiller is my Twitter handle. Please follow me on that one. And of course, on Facebook, go to Okilla Fitness and be a part of that family growing big and better. Okilla Fitness is the page, of course, on Facebook. And of course, on YouTube, go and subscribe to my channel, which is Okilla Fitness. And I will be sharing a lot more information there. Until next time, stay blessed and stay focused to your health and fitness. Thinking is not very easy for everyone. Every time you sit to think about something, some people will tell you that was dumb, you don't have to go through it. And some people will tell you, or maybe, have you ever thought about thinking of something and you don't find a space or where to sit and do something? And maybe even your father doesn't allow you to have the garage at home, or even sitting under the tree at home, or in the kitchen to try and create something. And then they say you are not being sharp, you're not thinking out of the box. But the problem is, everybody needs somewhere and where to actually start the thinking process. Ladies and gentlemen, the thinking space in Uganda is very narrow for a creative. Have you seen these guys who have cornrows walking on the street with a backpack, and then everybody thinks that they are mad? They enter a restaurant and everyone sings, you know, like Alex Mukulu, please vayo, or something happens. So today on the Creative Industry Talk, we're talking about spaces and places where people who think and create things can go and actually have a place for them to do something. Well, those places are usually not very much available. We don't know whether it's only in Uganda, but it seems to be the case in Kenya, in Rwanda, in Burundi, in Africa, in Europe, and everywhere. Young people are often described as crazy people. Discussing and dismantling this topic on the show today are a group of people who have done it. Ladies and gentlemen, all the way from France back to Uganda, the last time was saying light on, just light here, is Stella Atam. Stella, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
First of all, welcome home.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back home. I'm happy to be live in the studio.
Yes.
Not lights on, left, right, center.
Yes.
I'm so happy.
And of course, the judger of camera work in Uganda, the judger of film, the judger, the man who set the bar. You know, he appeared on the show last week, and I was told that, did you remember that we used to be paid 25,000 shillings for camera work? And we went from 25 to 50,000, from 50,000 to 100,000 to, you know, and then one time Musta chucked a wire for everyone on the set and says, going forward from this set, I want 300,000. You don't have it, you don't call me. That's how the camera people started being paid. Now we have 500, we have 300, we have 500 and infinity. That's why we call him the judger of camera. Musta, welcome back to the program.
What an introduction.
Yes, yes. And then so you appeared on the show last week and everyone was saying, yeah, your description was right. Musta is really the judger. Every camera person seems to think that you set the record right for them. But there were many people before you who did camera work.
Yes.
But we are comfortable at 25,000. Including myself. 25K was the order to pay. But welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, we want to hear a different perspective all the way from Paris. The one and only Noah Robin, who is also an engineer for textile design in France. She's a student in one of the universities in France. Here with Stella Tal on a project. And of course, she's going to be doing something amazing with Stella. Noah, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bonjour, ça va?
Bonjour. Ça va bien?
We don't want Stella to start the way Stella is sitting. She might start speaking French when we're here, but we are lucky to have you on the show.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And so, guys, this is called the Creative Industry Talk, where we have a discussion about the creativity and the creative minds in Uganda. And today on the program, we want to start this program from a very interesting note. Most of you appeared on the show last week, and we're talking about creative spaces in Uganda and the future of the creative spaces in Uganda. For the very first time in the history of Uganda, we have a creative space, or we're beginning to think of creative spaces. Yes, we've had National Theatre, we've had amphitheaters, this is where people go to showcase their work. This is where people go to do the drama and the plays. For those who are in the playwrights, for those who are in the, acting business. Now, for those who are singing, they don't even have places to go to think first of all. Those who are doing camera work found themselves doing it inside their bedrooms, but there has never been a space for somebody to say, you know what, I want to create something where I'm thinking I'm crazy. Everybody is born with the DNA of creativity in them. It is only when we allow them to practice them that they come out. So last week on the show, we've received enormous over 500, responses on Facebook Live, on Facebook Messenger, making references. All sorts of emotions came out from the last week's show. And everybody was talking about the camera. You talked about it. If there was a space for them to go and sit about the pay of the camera operators in Uganda. Somebody talked about, they always call us the cameraman. I don't want somebody to ever call me a cameraman. I'm a camera operator. And could there be a space for us to discuss this thing? And Mosta knows this very well. When you're a camera operator and it says a cameraman on the show, if you call this gentleman running the cameras here as cameraman, literally for a common person is understandable, but they don't just sit there and hold the camera as a man, they operate the camera. So, but there's no space for these people to sit and have a discussion about their fees, about the things they want to do. So that's a recap of what happened last week. People felt like Faisal talked very well about the issues of corporates coming into the show and making sure that, that issue of the basket you brought here with Faisal picked up big feedback. Nice. And then the one that was very interesting was receiving actually and having a phone call with Tony Otoa yesterday. And the Stanbic Bank Business Incubation Limited or Incubator Limited had a very interesting review of the show, and Tony Otoa requested for us to have a piece of that and send it to him because you guys were making references, and I think that people are beginning to learn a lot from the discussion we had. Picking from there, Musta,